But before I go, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Our lives are full of unanswered questions. Do other serial killers consider Harold Shipman to be a bit of a gold poacher? Does the R in R. Kelly stand for rape? Do cats know that their arseholes aren't normal? And is this why they keep showing them to us? Does this look normal to you, buddy? I'm worried it looks a bit like a ham Cheerio. But the greatest conundrum of all is our mortality. And it's to our middle-aged and older viewers I'd like to talk tonight. Nobody really warns you about getting older. Someone sits you down at puberty and has a talk. No one tells you at 45 that in a couple of years' time you're going to be ejaculating like a party popper from a flood-damaged pound shop. That one day you'll develop brown spots in your skin, look down at yourself and realise that if you were a banana, you'd be thrown away. I've been thinking about mortality because this week Colin Powell, a key instigator of the Iraq War, died. God, I miss him. Yes, he made mistakes, but who among us hasn't told some lies that led to the death of several 100,000 civilians? I know I have. Powell died from COVID, but for old time's sake, he tried to blame it on Saddam Hussein. He was snatched from us all too soon at the age of just 84. That's right, the curse of 84 strikes again. Why is it that so many celebrities mysteriously die aged 84? Joe DiMaggio, Sir Isaac Newton, Salvador Dali, Oswald Mosley and Angela Lansbury, who I've included because I wanted to put a woman on the list. Angela Lansbury is actually still alive. At the time of recording. When the cursed spirit of Colin Powell was ushered into the Club of 84, the blood-stained velvet rope would have been unclipped and lifted by none other than the saxophonist who played the riff on Jerry Rafferty's 1978 hit Baker Street, Raphael Ravenscroft, who lived a mere 36 years after the song was released, dying in 2014 at the age of, you guessed it, 60. Which shows how powerful the curse of the 84 Club can be, reaching back through time to strike down Ravenscroft 24 years early. A lesson for us all. Good night. Before I go, I'd like to leave you with this thought. I'm aware that words can mean different things in different places. For example, in Glasgow, the word entrepreneur means someone who'll kill your ex for 80 quid. But what about the word superstition? I'd say that I'm highly sceptical of most superstitions. I don't believe that drinking the blood of virgins keeps you young. I just like the taste. I suppose the only belief I have that could be classed as superstitious at a push is that you can predict the future by examining the spilled entrails of an animal. That's why a couple of months ago, naked as the day I was born, I adorned a goat with ribbons and bells, doused it with sacred oils, kissed it on the forehead and slaughtered it with a hand axe in my garage. As I knelt among the hot guts of the still twitching goat, I saw a problem. There was a small toy truck lodged in the upper intestine of the goat. The omen was clear. There would soon be a catastrophic collapse of Britain's trucking sector. As I'm heavily invested in both the UK road haulage industry and a variety of people trafficking schemes, I had to do something. I needed to focus. So, using a basic honey and CBD oil base, I mixed a 50-50 blend of ketamine and MDMA and washed it down with 4 Red Bulls and the remains of a Wall's Viennetta, which I found at the back of a garage chest freezer, next to what looked like a human hand, but I may have been hallucinating by then. By the time I returned to something approaching rationality, it was too late. My phone was already sending me alerts about the lack of British truck drivers, focusing on how difficult it would be to quickly train the replacements, as simultaneously urinating in an empty Lucozade bottle while suffocating a hitchhiker with your other hand is a skill that can take years to learn. I had to do something, and quickly. I needed to focus. So using a basic honey and CBD oil base, I mixed a 30-60-10 blend of mescaline, peyote and PCP. Washed down with some water I found sitting in an old hose pipe and some strips of goat liver that I flash fried on the garage floor using some lawnmower fuel. By the time I returned to something approaching rationality, I was already 20 minutes late for recording my film review podcast, Focus on Film, brackets, Location. I'd arranged to have a chat with Laura Simons, who'd worked as assistant location manager in Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, which is one of my top 10,000 films of all time. I needed to focus. So, using a basic honey and CBD oil base, I mixed a 30-12-18-40 blend of heroin, Xanax, mushrooms, and fentanyl, and washed it down with some semi-fermented goat urine, which I sucked straight from the bladder. By the time I returned to something approaching rationality, I found myself with my head caught sideways in the abdominal cavity of the goat. In 6 days after I first led Snowflake into my garage, I was freed by a traumatized postman, to whom I would like to apologize. And I'd also extend that apology to Laura Simons. Laura, thank you for arriving on time to our meeting at Cafe Nero. That naked man tangled in strips of animal hide and screaming about the British trucking industry was me. But I can see why you felt the need to taser me. Good night. But before I go, I'd like to leave you with this thought. The United Nations declared 2021 the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labour, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. I can step away from the child labour market for a year and not feel it financially. After all, what's a year in the scheme of things? I don't want to be that guy. People looking at me at parties, whispering to each other. You see him, that handsome Scottish guy, who looks like he's been working out quite a bit recently. He's only been spending 2021 using child labour in his various schemes. Oh my goodness, says the swimwear model. That's terrible. But why does it make me want to sleep with him even more? Honestly, I don't know, says the other swimwear model, but I feel exactly the same. And the first swimwear model smiles and says, wait, Stephanie, I've got an idea. And Jasmine whispers huskily, is it an idea about sex? And Stephanie nods and looks across at me and mouths the word sex. Which I don't see because I'm checking my resting heart rate on my Fitbit, which is 164 beats per minute. The lowest it's been in years. And then some other stuff happens, which I'll be describing on my OnlyFans, but spoiler warning, it involves two swimwear models and an incident described by my cardiologist as a wake-up call. And yet my galloping libido is as nothing compared to that of the former Secretary of State for Health, Matt Hancock. Up until 2017, Matt Hancock was in his dream job, Minister for Taxi Handjobs. Hancock only accepted the role of Health Secretary on the understanding that he'd be able to wander around hospitals and froth his aching dipstick against MRI scanners and dialysis machines. But then along came COVID-19, the ultimate cockblock. Matt was frantic. He needed his 39 orgasms a day, or the punishing amounts of semen produced by his hyperactive testes would back up into his eyeballs. A meeting of Cobra was called, at which the Chief of Defence Staff laid out a plan, dubbed Operation Corridor Cockknot. It was believed that if they could get the Health Secretary out into the corridor, someone with strong enough hands could tie a knot in his wang. All they needed was a volunteer with a superhuman tolerance for getting jabbed in the hip by an overexcited minister's schlong. Gina Coladangelo didn't hesitate. What you don't see in the CCTV footage of her and Hancock is what happens afterwards. The lightning dip through his zipper, the darting wrists, and the look of sheer horror on Hancock's face as his phallus is twisted into a clove hitch. And Gina Coladangelo, while publicly shamed, has been hailed a hero in Whitehall, and in a private ceremony was awarded the UK's highest peacetime sexual award, the Prince Andrew Cross. Good night. But before I go, I'd like to leave you with this thought. I can remember very vividly when I found my first grey pubic hair. It was stuck between my teeth. I was 8 years old and had stayed up to try to see Santa. Now that I'm nearly 50, I look back on my life and see that a lot of it was shaped by my upbringing. In Britain, many of us have had our life opportunities determined by social class. But many people who went to public school reflexively deny their privilege. Oh no, I wasn't one of the really posh ones. I was so far down the pecking order at school, there were nights when I had to rape myself. I was thinking of all this when I got a bit of flack during lockdown for tweeting a joke about newspapers going out of business. I had journalists saying, this is hypocritical because you used to work for newspapers. That to me is the most middle-class attitude that you could have. The idea that because you work somewhere, you must like it. I come from a working-class background. I imagine if you work somewhere, you want it to burn to the fucking ground. And for everyone one pay grade above you to die in the fire. To be fair, one of the reasons middle-class people don't understand the working class is they often lie to them during job interviews. When they're asked, where do you see yourself, ideally, in 5 years' time? They rarely reply, standing in the ruins of this building, pissing on your burning skull. All I'm saying is the cleaners in the Twin Towers, when they saw the planes coming towards them, must have had kind of mixed feelings. Capitalism is asking us to sacrifice our children. That's what the class system is. That's what the climate catastrophe is. We've been asked to sacrifice our children so a tiny group of shareholders and billionaires can hoard things that they don't need or even really want. I used to be outraged by the system we're trapped in and the way it destroys lives. Then I bought a live, laugh, love magnet for my fridge. And now it all just washes over me. Let me be clear, I don't think that we should kill CEOs of fossil fuel companies or hedge fund managers or billionaires. I don't think that we should do anything illegal. I think we need to peacefully campaign to make killing those people legal. And if we don't get those law changes, we should peacefully campaign for a law that allows us to kill the people who are blocking those laws. Good night. But before I go, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Of course, no one knows for sure when this civilization will come to an end. It could be literally any time between June and September next year. However, there is some good news. And by good, I mean catastrophic. Like when I say I'm good in bed. In reality, my lovemaking is at best unsettling and at worst blasphemous. But now, thanks in no small part to the global financial markets, we can bask in the unfettered, joyous knowledge that there's no future for humanity. And without a future, money becomes meaningless. I recently noticed for the first time the wording on one of the £50 notes I was counting off onto an exhausted and, I dare say, perplexed rent boy's bedside table. I promise to pay the bearer. Every banknote is a promise, but in a world with no future, a promise is just a lie, like the promises you make to a hitchhiker. The coming apocalypse will collapse the grand fiction of global capital. We will inhabit a world without promise, without hope, without meaning. A world that's almost impossible to imagine if you've never been to Dundee. Here's my advice. Invest your money now while it still has value, but not in tinned food, guns, generators, or abuse bunkers. I mean, who hasn't already got enough of those? No, if you want to thrive in the post-collapse economy, you need to invest in plastic surgery and physical augmentation. In this raw and visceral economy, wealth will be measured in bodily prowess. Hand jobs will be the new currency. So if you can get your big toes surgically reattached to give you a prehensile foot grip, you can double your money. Get a plastic surgeon to add 2 rows of serviceable vaginas up your back and turn your torso into a sex flute. Then, assuming your plastic surgeon hasn't been struck off yet, get a ring of 6 or 7 anuses added to each thigh like a fuckable garter. And a stiff crop of cocks around each wrist, so that while your back and thighs are being hammered, you can reach out of the heaving clusterfuck to bring off passers-by. Within weeks, you will become rich beyond your wildest nightmares.